promote the illusion that some different collection of pro-capitalist politicians would act or think differently. They would not. When workers and youth ask us whether or not they are being sold out, we say it's the wrong way to formulate the question. Social classes with irreconcilable interests are in conflict. The task in Australia, as we see it, is to unite the working class with its counterparts around the globe in a common struggle to end a bankrupt social order, capitalism, and ensure all the gains of human civilisation and progress can be taken forward on higher foundations, that is socialism. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. James Cogan, for that spirited presentation. Now, the second speaker in tonight's panel is Mr. John McRae. John McRae is mechanical industries, shift engine and coal mining and poultry farmer in former times, and he was in the transport business also. He's been following politics since he left school and speaking extensively on radio, and he spoke at the CO2 rally recently. He writes, "I have witnessed the demise of jobs in this wonderful country, so I'd like you to welcome Mr. John McRae."
Good evening. There's four things that have put us in the situation we're in this country today. Taxes, tariffs, treaties and the Family Law Court. There's just some of the treaties and agreements that we've signed or been signed for on our behalf. There's approximately 7,000 of them. You cannot get those volumes anymore. They've stopped you getting them. And that's not all of them. I couldn't bring all of them. But the article that wrecked the whole lot of us was in 1975 when we signed the United Nations Industry Development Organisation, affectionately known as the Lima Declaration, where we transferred our jobs overseas. Not every country signed it. America, Britain, Germany, France, Belgium, Sweden, China, none of them signed it, but we did, along with Asian countries. I'll give you a couple of articles out of it that you may never have seen. And it was signed in Lima, Peru, and that's why they affectionately call it the Lima Declaration. Now, Article 28, that Australia ensures that developing countries' share of the world trade increases by more than 350% by the year 2000. Article 35, that Australia transfer technical and financial resources as well as capital goods to accelerate the industrialisation of underdeveloped countries. Article 44, that Australia seek a reformed international monetary system to meet the specific needs of developing countries. Article 25, that Australia establish a new international economic forum. Now no one was ever told about that, and that's where we're at today. Now, I've got a list of companies. What I'm speaking about is what I've witnessed growing up. Within 15 kilometres of here, I'll just get some companies that we had in this country here, what we did and manufactured. These are companies just around this area here, where the glass manufacturers at Waterloo, AGI, they employed about 2,000 people. Crown Crystal, they were just down the street from, they employed 1,500. John Wakewood's Lift, Otis Elevation, Fountain Brand Tomato Sauce was in Surrey Hills in Elizabeth Street. Rosella was in Morley Avenue, Rosebery. We had Jane Manufacturers in Redford. We had Exide Batteries at Waterloo, Century Batteries at Alexandria, Chubb Safes at Waterloo. They're still going, but they've been taken over. We have Warmel Brothers, the best fire extinguisher and safety company in the world. It was bought out by Tyco International in 1990. We had paint manufacturers. We had 6 or 7 of them. That's in Rosebery, Mascot, Alexandria, St Peters, around that area. We had the greatest machinery manufacturers. Made lathes, shapers, drills, centerless sanders, centre lathes, turret lathes, everything. They were McPherson, Nuttall, Brackenbury and Austin, Hercus, Sheraton, Demco, Cleveland and Stratton. They were all there. And we had our own iron foundries that made the lathe beds, the headstocks, the tool stocks, all there. We had them all around there. We had cotton mills in Botany Road and Botany, Target, Sydney, and Australian in Mascot, along Botany Road, and even at Zetland. BMC motor cars at Zetland, and you can still see, it used to be a race course owned by Joint and Smith, that owned the Australian Glass Works at Waterloo. It was the biggest race course in Sydney, bigger than anything we've got. It had a 9-hole golf course in the middle of it. And that was where BMC was. There was 2,700 people employed there on 3 shifts making cars. We had printing makers, printing machines, ink makers, label makers, tin makers. We had the best tanneries in the world at Botany. And they still export our wattle to use it overseas. We had PEX paste, you might remember PEX paste, some of the little PEX goes such a long way. We had shoe manufacturers in Redfern, Waterloo, hat manufacturers, shirt manufacturers. But because of these Luma declarations that allowed, we reduced our tariffs, they can't compete. And they've got no chance of competing with the tax system we've got here. Then we get on to I'll just give a brief summation of that. Then we get on to our fishing system. We import 70% of our fish from overseas countries. And we have the largest coastline in the world per head of capita. That's per head of population, per head of capita. Our coastline extends from just about New Guinea all the way down to Antarctica. The most pristine water in the world. And they complain about the barrier reef, you know, things happening at the barrier reef. That's been caused because in this agreement, this Lima Declaration, we signed a lineal agreement which allowed the ships to come in on the inner reef where they were never ever allowed. And what's happening? They're discharging their ballast, and all the impurities from other places in the world are encroaching on our barrier reef and other things. Same as what's happening at Hawkesbury, where the ships come in at Newcastle, discharge their ballast, and all that's what killed the oyster farmers and everything. So we import 70% of our fish. But Australia has the highest amount and percentage of marine parks, 36%. It gets worse than that. Greg Hunt this year was in Europe reporting to the United Nations how we control and look after our barrier reef and our fishing. Now why do we have to report to them? Does that mean the United Nations, they're telling us what we can do here? Well, they're telling us what we can do with jobs, with the Lima Declaration and everything else, so they might as well do it with the fishing. Now fish used to be a reasonable meal. Now it's a luxury item. And there's nowhere else in the world that can grow fish, the variety of fish, and get it 365 days a year like Australia can, because they're restricted with their geological and geographical situation, ice under and everything else. And their waters are half polluted. The Sea of Japan's got so much nuclear waste in it and everything else, and the China's stuff polluted, the Mekong River's polluted, and we haven't got a fish cannery place in the world. Nothing left here. And yet we're bringing all the fish cannery stuff, oysters and everything else from overseas, where their hygiene standards are not the same as ours. And when we had all these industries, we built the machinery. I seen it being built. We built the cannery stuff, our dairy industry, the whole lot. Now, to give you a classic example on hygiene, look what happened with the berries.
Yeah.
Now, that's just one instance. Now in Tasmania, that is the purest. Now that's the purest water you'll get in the world, and there's more currents go around there than anywhere. The salmon they get there is equal to anything, and they grow mussels down there now about that big. China came out, the Asian country, and they nearly dropped dead when they saw how big they were. Then they showed them what they were doing with scallops. Then they said, have a look at this, what we do with oysters. We've got to get in on this. Go down to Tassie, they've got busloads of people going right around. There's a bloke down there grows cherries, $1 each, they're that big, they're like tennis balls. We take him over to China and show us what to do. I'll go to the farming situation. I'll go. My brain goes 100 mile an hour. Now, Australia's perfected a new strain of wheat and barley. There's no one no other country in the world can grow rural produce like we can here. No one. And we can do it 365 days of the year, of every variety, every variation, every quantity. No other country can do it. And China, majority of China's rural land is all polluted from the contaminants they've used. That's why they want all of our stuff. And they want to come out here and buy our joint up. Now, this barley and wheat that they've just perfected enabled Tasmania to win the first and second malt championship whisky in the world. A little place like that. These are the achievements that Australia can do, and have done and can still do it. And all the machinery that was used during the war and everything else was made here and done here. And we've wiped it out with those tariffs I've just shown you, and stopped our manufacturing. Our competitors all around the world that are successful countries have all got manufacturing. I'll give you a classic example of how smart Australians are. You remember when the Pashabuka went aground up at Newcastle? That boat can be built in 9 weeks. They build them in modules and then assemble them. 60% of the raw material come from here, and 60% of the expertise come from here. They're all paid in American dollars. The lowest paid man on 40 hours a week up there is about $50,000 a year. Our Australian blokes are getting between 180 and 200,000 a year. And they say our wages are crook. Well, they're doing it there. Now, South Korea was a basket case after the war, and it was helped along by other countries. Now they're the world leader in shipbuilding, fast train, tunnelling, and IT stuff. And half of the expertise come from here. We've got the greatest innovators, the greatest engineers, and the greatest people, farmers, medical, everything. Go and have a look at the Snowy Mountain scheme, what we did. We've raised our own money for that through the Commonwealth Bank Reserve Bank powers at 5/8%. One of the greatest engineering achievements in the world. No one can emulate it, can never emulate. It's the hardest concrete in the world. The bloke that did it was Sir William Hudson. I was privileged to meet him numerous times and speak to him. A brilliant man. He wanted to redirect all the rivers and everything, along with Bradfield initially stated when he did the Harbour Bridge. And Menzies shut it down. Now, all Australia needs is water. And there's plenty of water, but it all falls up there, up the top. And it's all got to be channeled down. Look at no one will ever be able to ascertain how much wealth and prosperity the Snowy Mountain scheme generated. It'd be impossible because of the electricity situation. Here we are going to sell the poles and wires off, and they reckon they're business managers. They're going to get 50 billion for it. And it creates 1.8 billion in profit every year. Imagine how much money you can borrow and incur a debt of 1.8 billion. It's around about 150 billion a year. 150 billion you can borrow. That's only the interest. The capital will be paid off over time like they did with everything else. But we're going to sell it. Sell it off and someone else owns it. This is Agenda 21, where we're governed by overseas entities. And it's all been done in secrecy. And when they sign this Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is all, they've admitted it's all in secrecy, but when we sign it, we're going to tell you what we've done. It's too late then. All they've got to do is ratify it. Now, where we're sitting here, from 1920 to 1930, there was 5 million people in the place. We're just getting over the First World War. We built the icons. Sydney Harbour Bridge, the complete, Bradfield did it, this complete rail network of Sydney, the underground stuff, they had horse and carts and hand drills and everything else, and all the outlying areas for the electric train service, and 3 dams, the Avon, the Pean and Cordo Dam. And basic wage was only about £5 a week. Now they reckon we can't do it. We've got more infrastructure, we've got more machinery, more technology, more money. Our superannuation funds hold more money than the 4 banks put together. But we can't do it. We've got to, if we build a road, we can't even build a road now without it's a toll road. We own the stuff, and they sell it out to overseas companies. Like the Singapore people own the M2 railway, or the Canadian one own it, and everything else. So we build a road, but we've got to pay a toll. And the reason being is because of the tax. And the Tax Act of 1953 is what's crippling Australia financially today. And they're just recognising it. I've been on it for 40 years. I'd speak on radio, one certain radio announcer of a morning said, John, you're not going to talk about the Lima Declaration, you're talking about it now, loss of jobs, and you're not going to talk about tax, because it didn't suit the agenda. They don't want to tell you the truth. They want to think we're all hurricane lamps out here. And hurricane lamps are an old warfare expression for not being very bright. But I can assure you there's plenty of people in Australia that are searchlights. Now the Tax Act of 1953 stated that if we were building the Snowy Mountains scheme, and international companies were here, and we were doing this whole motor car, which Australia owned. And Australia revolutionised the motor industry of the world. And that meant that if you're manufacturing, investing or conducting business in this country, you need not pay tax here, but tax in the country of your origin. John Cotton stated in the Cotton Report in 61, 62, if we don't tax these companies, we'll bankrupt the country. Where are we at today? And we are the richest country in the world, bar none. We've got 75 of the 77 minerals the world requires in abundance, and we're awash with oil, coal and gas. There's $22 trillion worth of shale oil in South Australia. There's the shale oil seam just out of Lithgow supplied all our military complement and our domestic complement during the war. It means he said it's unprofitable. But he didn't tell the truth. My mate's father was engineer there. The retorts that he used would come out in the 1800s from Scotland. So they were nearly obsolete then, but yet they still functioned. So it was Commonwealth Oil Refinery, so we shut it down. And then that's when Caltex came out and went to Kurnell. Now what people have got to recognise the fact is, and the politicians, they think we're not awake to it, the International Monetary Fund direct our treasuries, and our treasuries direct our politicians. And every time a project comes up, they say, the Treasury report. Hello, we didn't vote for the Treasury, we voted for a politician. And if he can't do it, open the door and give him a McDonald's voucher and see you later, alligator. It's because they're oxygen bandits. They're not working in the interest of the country. Jack Brabham, no one can ever equal his record. No one. He revolutionised Grand Prix race, took on the might of the Grand Prix world. All the multi-trillionaires of Europe, Mercedes, Ferrari, Maserati, Lamborghini, Alfa Romeo, with a little car with a rear engine. They said, that won't work. He's the only man in the world to win the World Manufacturers Championship and the Driver Championship in the car he designed, manufactured, and he was a mechanic. The engine was a copy of the 308 Holden block and made out of aluminium, and all the Repco engineers got together and did the heads and organised everything else. And he couldn't get the good tyres because all the Maserati and the oligarchies and the Silvertails had a Firestone, Pirelli, Michelin, Avon, all the top tyres, they had them tied up. He had to cut Dunlop tyres, they supplied, but he still beat them. He went to Indianapolis, where the biggest sporting event in the world. Went over there, revolutionised that too. Ken Warby, you people might know him. He's a nice bloke. Broke the water speed record, 500 and something mile an hour. And they claim that Ben Lexon had the first one in Cool. He had the first one, and if you saw the boat, you wouldn't go across Cook's River in it. But he went 511 mile an hour in it, with the help of the ingenuity and the intelligence of the Flinders Naval Base in Melbourne.